Hi, I'm Julie Powell, and this is the story of how I learned that sometimes the people you trust the most, your own family, can turn into your greatest enemies, especially when it comes to business. For 11 long years, I dedicated everything I had to our small family-owned tech company. What started as a struggling little shop eventually became a thriving $70 million enterprise, thanks to my hard work and vision. But as I soon discovered, success doesn't always bring joy to everyone. Sometimes it brings out envy, even in those who should be cheering you on the loudest. I still remember when it all began. Our family business was a tiny computer repair shop tucked into a strip mall. My dad had started it about 21 years earlier, and although it barely brought in enough to support us, it was his pride and joy. He poured his heart into that little shop, and I admired his dedication. My older sister, Mary, was always the golden child. She was the star student who got straight A's, went to an MCCI business school, and seemed destined for greatness.
Me?
I was the quiet one. I stayed home, helping Dad with the shop while I worked on my computer science degree at a local college. Mary would visit us during her breaks from college, full of big ideas and bold advice. "Julie, you're wasting your potential here," she'd tell me, her voice dripping with superiority. "You should aim for something bigger."
But I didn't see it that way.
While Mary was learning about business theories in her ivory tower, I was learning something just as valuable, real-world skills. I spent my days coding, observing customer needs, and spotting gaps in the market. During my final year of college, inspiration struck. I developed our first ever proprietary software. It wasn't groundbreaking or fancy, but it was simple, user-friendly, and affordable, a tool designed to help small businesses manage their inventory with ease. At first, Dad wasn't convinced. He was old-fashioned and skeptical of anything new. But when a few local businesses started buying the software, his attitude shifted. "Maybe you're onto something here, kiddo," he said one day, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of pride in his eyes. Those words meant the world to me. I had worked so hard to prove myself, and for a moment, I felt like I'd finally done it. But looking back, I realized how fleeting that moment really was, like morning dew that disappears with the first rays of sunlight. From that point on, the business began to grow. Slowly but surely, our little repair shop transformed into something more. Under my guidance, we expanded our services, launched new products, and built a loyal customer base. I poured my heart into the company, working 15-hour days, 8 days a week. It wasn't easy, but I believed in what we were building. Meanwhile, Mary was climbing her own ladder of success, working at a prestigious consulting firm in Houston. She rarely came home, but when she did, her visits were always filled with subtle jabs and condescending remarks. To her, I was still just the little sister running a small-time operations in our hometown. I let her comments roll off my back, focusing instead on the bigger picture. I was determined to prove that our family business had the potential to be something great. But as the company grew, so did the tension between us. I was too focused on work to see the warning signs, but looking back, they were all there. Little did I know, the biggest betrayal was yet to come, and it would shake the very foundation of everything I thought I knew about family. I was building something real, something I could truly call my own. Our little repair shop had transformed into a thriving software development company, and what started as serving local businesses soon expanded to working with national corporations. My mom, ever the quiet observer, watched it all with gentle concern. She would often bring me dinner at the office, her voice soft but filled with worry. "Don't work too hard, Julie," she'd say, placing the food on my cluttered desk. "You need a life outside of work, too." But I couldn't stop. I was driven, not just by a vision of what our company could become, but maybe, deep down, by a need to prove myself, not just to the world, but to my family. It wasn't easy, but slowly, our efforts began to pay off. 6 years into our transformation, we hit our first $1 million in annual revenue. It was a milestone I'll never forget, but it also marked the beginning of everything changing. That was when Mary, my older sister, suddenly became interested in the family business again. After years of building her career in Houston and barely giving us a second thought, She quit her high-paying corporate job and moved back home. At a family dinner, she made her announcement in her usual confident way, her tone leaving no room for argument. "I think it's time I took my rightful place in the company," she said, smiling as though it was a foregone conclusion. "With my business expertise, we could really take things to the next level." Dad's face lit up at her words. "That's wonderful, Princess," he said, his pride unmistakable. "We could use your professional touch around here." I sat there, my fork frozen in midair, trying to process what was happening. This was the company I had built, through endless late nights, hard work, and sacrifice. And now, it was being handed to Mary on a silver platter, as though she had played any role in its growth. But I kept my objections to myself. Maybe I didn't want to cause a scene, or maybe I was still holding on to the hope that my hard work would speak for itself. Mary was soon appointed as co-CEO, a decision Dad justified by saying it would be good for the company's image. "She has the credentials, Julie," he said. "Clients and investors respect that sort of thing." While I focused on the work I loved, product development, client relationships, and operations, Mary took over marketing and investor relations. The next 6 years were a stark contrast in leadership styles. I was in the trenches, working with my team to develop innovative software solutions and ensure our clients were satisfied. Mary, on the other hand, turned herself into the public face of the company. She gave interviews about being a woman in tech, gracing magazine covers, and speaking at conferences. She accepted awards for entrepreneurship, her name always plastered on plaques that celebrated the company's success. But what hurt the most was that she took credit for the innovations my team and I had created. Our revenue continued to grow, reaching an impressive $70 million annually. From the outside, we looked like a dream team, 3 sisters leading a successful tech company. But behind the scenes, the tension between us was unbearable. Mary began making major decisions without consulting me. She started excluding me from important meetings and slowly pushed me out of the spotlight. It was as though I was being erased from the very company I had built with my own hands. The breaking point came on Dad's 65th birthday. Mary had planned an extravagant celebration, renting the grand ballroom of the city's most expensive hotel. It was less of a birthday party and more of a networking event, her style, of course. She invited business associates, investors, and industry leaders, all under the guise of celebrating Dad. Everything had to serve a purpose with Mary, and this event was no different. I arrived at the party feeling like an outsider in my own family. The room was filled with unfamiliar faces, people who barely knew Dad and were more interested in making connections than celebrating his milestone. Mary, dressed in an elegant designer gown, was the center of attention. She floated around the room with a glass of champagne, basking in the admiration of her guests. Meanwhile, I sat quietly at a corner table, watching it all unfold. The company I had poured my heart into was now unrecognizable. My contributions were overshadowed by Mary's polished image and relentless ambition. Little did I know that night would change everything, and not in a way I could have ever anticipated. I arrived early at the grand ballroom to help with the preparations. I wore a simple black dress, practical and comfortable, though not flashy. As soon as Mary saw me, she shot me a disapproving look, her voice low but sharp. "Couldn't you have made more of an effort?" she hissed. "These are important people coming tonight." I bit back a response and instead focused on my tasks. There was no point in arguing with her, not tonight. I busied myself greeting guests as they arrived, while Mary worked the room like a seasoned politician, charming everyone with her practiced smile and smooth words. The room filled quickly with business associates, clients, and family friends. The atmosphere was buzzing with chatter, laughter, and the occasional clinking of glasses. Mary, in her designer dress, moved from group to group, effortlessly commanding attention. I stayed in the background, ensuring everything ran smoothly, as I always did. During dinner, as the courses were being served, Mary clinked her glass to signal for silence. She stood up with the confidence of someone who had practiced her moment in the spotlight countless times. I expected her to give a heartfelt speech about Dad, a touching tribute to his hard work and the sacrifices he had made for the family. Maybe she'd share some warm childhood memories. But what Mary said next would shatter everything I had worked so hard to build. As we celebrate Dad's 65th birthday, she began, her voice ringing out across the silent room, I think it's time to announce some changes at Powell Technologies. My stomach tightened. What changes? And since when did the company have a board making decisions? The board has agreed, Mary continued, her tone calm and authoritative, that the company needs unified leadership to move forward. She paused, her eyes scanning the room before settling on me. That's why, effective immediately, I will be taking over as sole CEO. My heart stopped. What was she talking about? Unified leadership? Sole CEO? For too long, Mary said, her voice carrying a hint of condescension, we've been held back by outdated thinking and resistance to change. Her gaze lingered on me as she spoke. It's time for certain elements that are no longer serving our growth to step aside. The room erupted in murmurs. I sat there, frozen in place, as the weight of her words sank in. My hands clenched in my lap as Mary continued her speech, which had turned into a calculated character assassination disguised as a corporate announcement. Some people, she said, her voice dripping with false sympathy, are better suited to technical roles rather than leadership. My sister Julie has done an adequate job maintaining our legacy systems, but to compete in today's market, we need vision. We need excellence. And frankly, Julie, you're just not cut out for this level of business. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She was tearing me down in front of everyone, our family, our friends, our clients. I looked at Dad, hoping he would defend me, stand up for me, say something. But he didn't. He just sat there, nodding along to Mary's words, a proud smile on his face. Mom, sitting quietly at the table, stared at her plate. Her hands trembled slightly, but she said nothing. The silence cut deeper than Mary's words. The truth is, Mary said, her voice rising, you're a liability in today's business world, Julie. Your outdated ideas and lack of proper business education have held us back for too long. It's time for you to step aside gracefully. The room was dead silent. Hundreds of eyes turned to me, waiting for my reaction. I could feel the weight of their stares, some filled with pity, others with judgment. My face burned, but I refused to let tears fall. Everything I had built, every late night, every sacrifice, was being stripped away in front of me. I stood up slowly, my chair scraping against the floor. The sound echoed through the ballroom, sharp and loud, like a gunshot. Everyone expected a scene, maybe tears, maybe a shouting match. But I had no intention of giving Mary that satisfaction. I picked up my purse and walked over to Dad's table. Taking out a small wrapped package, I placed it gently in front of him. Happy birthday, Dad, I said quietly, my voice steady. Then, without another word, I turned and walked out of the ballroom. I held my head high as I left, ignoring the whispers and stares behind me. My heart ached, but I refused to let them see my pain. That night, as I sat in my home office, surrounded by the awards and patents that bore my name, I made a decision. Mary thought she had won. She thought she had taken everything from me. But she had forgotten one crucial detail, something that would turn her moment of triumph into the biggest mistake of her life. She had underestimated me. I turned on my laptop and started typing, a small smile forming on my face. Tomorrow was going to be interesting. After all, there's more than one way to succeed in business, and I had learned more in 11 years than Mary ever did in all her fancy business classes. The next day would bring changes no one expected, changes that would make them see exactly how worthless I really was. The morning was bright and clear. I reached the office early, before anyone else, and waited. At exactly 8 a.m., Mary walked in with Dad beside her, both of them smiling like they'd already won. Those smiles wouldn't last long. Julie? Mary's voice was filled with surprise and irritation. What are you doing here? After last night, I thought you'd have the decency to stay home. I smiled, thinking about the email I had sent at 2 a.m. to every major client, partner, and employee at Powell Technologies. Just tying up some loose ends, dear sister. But since you're here, we should talk about the company's future. There's nothing to discuss, Dad said firmly. Mary's in charge now. The board has already approved it. The board, I replied, pulling out my tablet. Let's talk about that. While Mary was busy hosting parties and giving interviews, I was actually running this company. And there are a few things you both seem to have forgotten. I connected my tablet to the conference room's main screen and pulled up a document. First, let me remind you that I own 55% of Powell Technologies shares. When we started the company 11 years ago, Dad split the shares equally, 30% each for Mary and me, while keeping 53% for himself. But 4 years ago, when we needed money to expand, Dad sold me 23% of the shares. Remember that day, Dad? You were too busy attending one of Mary's award ceremonies to handle the deal, so you signed the papers without reading them carefully. Both their faces turned pale. Mary gripped the edge of the conference table with her perfectly manicured hands. That's not possible, she whispered. Dad would never. Oh, but he did, I continued, pulling up more documents. And that's not all. The core software that generates 90% of our revenue? It's not owned by Powell Technologies. It belongs to my separate company, Innovate Solutions, LLC. Powell Technologies only has a licensing agreement, which, by the way, expired. I glanced at my watch. About 10 minutes ago. Dad sank into a chair, the truth hitting him like a ton of bricks. The renewal papers, he mumbled. The ones you asked me to sign last week. The ones I didn't read because I was helping Mary plan her parties? Yes, those papers, I said. I decided not to submit them. Mary's face twisted with rage. You sneaky little. Careful, sister, I interrupted. You might want to hear the rest before you finish that sentence. While you were busy announcing my so-called graceful exit last night, I was sending emails to our clients. You see, most of our major clients have personal loyalty clauses in their contracts with Powell Technologies because of me, my skills, and my proven results. Last night, I let them know about the leadership changes and my departure. I pulled up my email, showing the flood of responses I had already received. Would you like to know how many clients have triggered their contract termination clauses? Or how many of our top developers, who, by the way, are actually employed by Innovate Solutions, have already accepted offers at my new company? The room went silent. Through the glass walls, we could see employees gathering, whispers spreading as they checked their emails. Mary's perfect calm broke as she frantically scrolled through her phone. You can't do this, she stammered. Oh, you mean the company you tried to steal from me? I said, my voice steady. The one you thought you could take over just because you have an MBA and Dad's approval? That company ceased to exist the moment you decided to humiliate me in front of everyone. I stood, smoothing my dress. Here are your options. Option 1. I walk away with my shares, my software, my clients, and my employees. Powell Technologies becomes an empty shell, and you can explain to all those important people you invited last night why the company's value has dropped to 0 overnight. Dad looked like he had aged 11 years in 10 minutes. And option 2? He asked weakly. Option 2, you both resign. I take full control of Powell Technologies. You keep your shares as silent partners, earning dividends but having no say in how the company is run. Mary gets a generous severance package and glowing references for her next job, far away from here. Mary's face turned red with anger. You planned this all along, didn't you? You've just been waiting for the perfect moment to stab us in the back. I laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound.
No, Mary.
I spent 11 years trying to be a good daughter and sister while you both treated me like I didn't matter. I built this company from nothing while you took credit for my work. I only made this plan about 14 hours ago, after you called me worthless in front of everyone. My phone buzzed. Another client termination notice. Time's running out. What's it going to be? The next hour passed in a blur of paperwork and lawyers. By noon, I was alone in what was now my office, looking out over the city. The company I built was finally mine. But the victory felt hollow. My family was shattered, our relationships broken like fragile glass. That evening, Mom came to see me, her eyes red from crying. Did it have to end this way? She asked softly. They didn't leave me a choice, I replied, my voice gentle but firm. They would have taken everything. I built something incredible, and they tossed me aside like I didn't matter. Mom nodded slowly, understanding but clearly sad. What happens now? She asked. I showed her the plans I had already drawn up, new expansions, fresh product lines, and innovations I'd been holding back. Now, I build something even bigger, I said. But this time, I won't carry people who see me as worthless. Over the next year, under my leadership alone, Powell Technologies tripled in value. Mary found a job at a startup in Silicon Valley, humbled but hopefully wiser. Dad retired, finally realizing that his golden child almost ruined the company he worked so hard to build. We see each other at family gatherings, keeping a polite distance that hides wounds that may never fully heal. Sometimes late at night, I look at old family photos and feel a pang of sadness for what we lost. But then I remember that birthday party, the look of disdain on Mary's face, and how Dad agreed with her cruel words. In both business and family, respect is something you earn, not something you're just given. They learned that lesson too late. As for me, I learned that the quiet ones, the ones others dismiss as worthless, are the ones to watch out for. We're the ones who know how to build something from nothing and take it all back when someone tries to steal it. My story became a cautionary tale in business circles, a reminder not to underestimate the wrong person. At industry events, I often hear whispers. That's Julie Powell, the one who, they never finish the sentence, but they don't need to. My success says it all. Last week, I received an invitation to speak at Mary's old business school for their graduation ceremony. The topic? Hidden strengths, the power of underestimated leaders. I accepted the invitation with a small smile, already planning my speech. I have quite a story to tell. The company continues to thrive under my leadership. But more importantly, I've found peace with my choices. Sometimes the strongest message you can send is proving people wrong. And sometimes, the best revenge isn't about tearing others down. It's about rising so high they can't ignore their mistakes. As I sit in my office overlooking the city, I think about something my mom once told me. Success is the best revenge, but wisdom is knowing when to stop seeking revenge and start focusing on growth. She was right. I've moved past the need for revenge. Now I focus on building something meaningful, something that will outlast the jealousy and family drama. I still keep the birthday gift I never gave Dad, a photo album showing the company's journey from a small repair shop to the powerhouse it is today. Maybe one day, when the wounds have healed enough, I'll give it to him. Until then, it's a reminder that our greatest strengths often come from the very things others overlook or underestimate.